Once you've created the logo, the next step is to basically come up with a visual identity and begin branding the company. Visual identity and branding share many similar characteristics. In the simplest form, a visual identity can be described as the development and application of a distinct logo type and perhaps a symbol that makes a company or organization recognizable. Branding, on the other hand, is the establishment of value and status for a unique product, service, or organization through the careful application of the identity itself. In both cases, appropriate visual elements, typefaces, groupings, color, they all need to be brought together cohesively to represent the distinct character of the brand. What makes a brand is the name style, it's the logo. That's what's going to capture and communicate the unique character, and that's what's going to make it highly marketable as an entity. Establishing a brand is likely to involve some considerable advertising and promotion, and it will need to cross a large variety of forms and locations. As an audience's familiarity with the identity grows, it's going to play a significant role in the development of a successful brand. Corporate identities involve not only the visible name, style, or symbol, but also the creation and practice of the organizational culture. So corporate identity guidelines are going to include both behavioral directives as well as notes on dress and uniforms, the way that the employee is going to interact with the customer. All these things kind of come together to create a corporate identity, and they will help to create a strong sense of belonging for both employees and customers alike. Consistency is important in the application of identity and branding designs, but you want to ensure that it doesn't lead to monotony. Consistency is really great, and most clients and designers have been taught that it is the end goal. But in many initial meetings, the client may specifically request the new identity be consistent. But without a solid brand platform, or a breakthrough idea, or a unique design, where's the consistency going to really get you? Consistency, you shouldn't ignore it, but the goal is to have a big, smart, breakthrough ideas that will elevate the client above their competition. Come up with a great idea first, and then think about how you can keep things consistent throughout the identity packaging. The creation of an identity is going to involve combining elements like typefaces, color, compositional relationships, and spatial distribution. You can certainly create a successful identity and brand by keeping at least one of these elements fixed and introducing a variety through the other elements that you'll be using. If you maintain a palette of brand colors through all the designs, the identity can remain strong with a surprising variety of typefaces or typographic systems and groupings. The right balance of consistency and flexibility can be difficult to define in some cases. So, for instance, if you have a name style or a symbol and it's always used in the same size and the same position, it can result in a range of bland solutions. But if you can apply it differently in every context, the design cohesion can be lost in certain cases as well. So you want to make sure that whatever your solution is, the perceived solution is to the customer is that it belongs in the same group. There are no definable rules or regulations, but you just want to make sure that over time you are creating something that is a unit, even though it might have different applications in some ways. So when you think about the way that you justify type on a business card, that should have bearing on how you set type on a brochure or a flyer or the website. All of those things should definitely be thought through and should just not be carelessly applied. When you navigate through the nuances and balance, then you'll be able to incorporate some flexibility that is going to help you to create a strong identity system as opposed to a weak identity system. When you're creating a brand or a visual identity, it's a good idea to develop a visual identity palette that's going to help you to address flexibility and scope of the project. The visual identity palette includes not just the name style or the logo, but a whole range of visual elements, including texture and pattern. It could be typographic systems, relationship of scale, spatial relationships, use of color, style of imagery, art direction, use and character of materials, the actual style of the language that's being used. These are all things that are available to you as design choices, and you can introduce flexibility and scope through the way that you change one or more of these elements. Establishing an identity palette makes it easier to introduce variety while maintaining a strong visual connection, and it will help link your various components through a range of applications. The interpretation of imagery, whether it be photographic or illustrative, can be a key element in the identity palette. The subject matter, the depth of field, the style of mark making, the form of the cropping, proportions, the shape of the image box, the use of color, they're all possible areas to focus on when creating a distinctive stylistic theme. Color within the imagery is often an underused tool. So even if you're using photography, which certainly is an appropriate form of communication and visual support, brand colors can be incorporated. So if you had a brand where your identity colors were a really bright green and perhaps a muted cocoa color or something like that, you could pick up those colors within the photographs that are featured, and the image, you'll help to solidify that brand of the image. Compositional characteristics can often form a distinctive part of an identity palette. The configuration of an organization's name style can influence the manner in which you bring imagery and type together. For example, if you have a logo that is or text, name style text, that is closely leaded and tracked and staggered across a number of lines, it might suggest presenting a group of images or selections of text in a similar way. Spatial distribution can also contribute key characteristics to an identity. In general, if you have a design that is a little busier, it suggests a very different personality from one that is more restrained. If you have a layout with a large use of white space, it is going to certainly convey a different message than something that is more tightly packed with content. Different kinds of industries, organizations, and markets often have a particular visual code that is synonymous with their areas of expertise and interest. While it's often essential to acknowledge any specific code, if a design is to be innovative and fresh and successful, it needs to also be distinctive. Identity design endeavors to communicate the essence of an idea by the most simple yet powerful means. If those means tap into a universal vocabulary which best describe the characteristics of a particular industry or service, then the designer can communicate to the widest audience available. Establishing a brand value that needs to be communicated to an audience is fundamental to your understanding of whether recognized visual codes should be adopted or, in some cases, challenged. If a client wishes to benefit from the reliable reputation of a wider industry, it's important that the visual codes of that industry are clearly acknowledged and, in some respects, overtly included in the identity you develop. However, it is often more valuable to communicate the contemporary nature of a company or product, and you should look into originating a fresh approach in many cases. The main purpose is to learn what symbols, styles, and colors are commonly used within the client's industry, and then determine what's appropriate for the client's audience. Once you have this knowledge, then you will know what is expected, and you can decide how to truly differentiate the client from the competition. All in all, understanding the visual identity and branding is going to be essential when you start to create the identity package. You're going to want to ensure that you create something that will cohesively work together and not fight, but will not be bland and boring. There's going to be visual interest, and there'll be subtle differences between the various components that you're going to be creating, but it will be harmonious, and that it will help to establish a effective brand for any particular company.